Hey yo, we're gonna be talking about SmackDown from December the 5th, 2025. There's not much to it, but I do want these people to leave my beloved NXT alone. I want them to leave NXT alone. Don't corrupt NXT with this SmackDown main roster garbage. All right. That being said, I am looking forward to the Saturday night's main event. Just from what I've heard so far, I'm actually very interested. Very, very interested, even though some of the outcomes are pretty obvious. So Saturday night's main event is all about generations. John Cena is the end of his road, is the beginning of the road for others. We're going to talk about, of course, the finale to the tournament, but I want to talk about what John Cena said first about Cena's statement about wrestling fans not really caring once he's gone. Cena said, and I didn't listen to the entire 2 hours, he says, they will be moved on by the Royal Rumble. I will be forgotten. 3 weeks after I retire, nobody will give a fuck. I think he's being a little humble, but I also think he's being extremely realistic in this statement. Cena knows that the machine just keeps going. He knows that. And he knows that in recent years, he's been a smaller and smaller part of the machine as it's keep going. He pops in and he pops out. So he's kind of being realistic when he says nobody's going to care. Because right after I'm gone, 3 weeks later, everybody's going to be hyped for Royal Rumble. And then, of course, the Royal Rumble is going to get everybody talking about that. And then we're on to WrestleMania. And then this time next year, we're going to be in the middle of something else. And I think he's being incredibly realistic about that. But it's actually kind of sad. I think at some other point, there was another clip that I saw where John Cena talked about missing a lot of his relationships because of wrestling. He's been on the road for 15 years straight or something like that. And I think his exact words were, when you say yes to one thing, meaning pro wrestling, you say no to pretty much everything else. So to now see that this guy is almost 50 and he's been wrestling consistently since 1999. He's been a top level superstar for 20 years. He's doing all these things, and the fact that he will be forgotten in just 3 weeks, and that's actually a realistic belief, is it's kind of sad. It's like you work your whole life on this project, and the project just moves on without you. And you realize that's kind of the harsh lesson of wrestling. And this also ties into his comment about Vince, about him never wanting Vince to go. I think he said that on Bill Simmons. He's been everywhere all of a sudden, but the show continued to move on even without Vince. So when you think about it from that perspective, it's highly realistic that John Cena, he'll be missed by his fans, obviously, but it's a tough situation to really sit down and think about. This is going to be the end of an era, and there will not be much time to milk it. Not a whole lot of time to settle it, because on the same night they're moving on. They're showcasing even people younger than the current generation. And I know people are complaining about, how old Gunther is. We'll talk about that in a second. But consider for a moment that they're featuring NXT talent on this show too. And so even Gunther's big moment, whether he wins or loses, is going to be overshadowed by the fact that there's even younger people that are going to be featured on this show. So Cena's on his way out, win or lose. And Gunther's replacements are going to be there, whether he wins or loses. There's a story in that concept that the WWE just moves on. And regardless of your age, your status, whether you're Rock, you're Austin, you're Undertaker, or whatever, when it's your time to go, you're gone. And the company just slides somebody else into that spot. So let's talk about the finals to the John Cena tournament. Obviously, I've already said that Gunther won, and Gunther defeated LA Knight. The match was fairly good. It wasn't as good as Gunther versus Solo Sikoa, in my opinion. Gunther wins via submission using an STF. And Gunther starts yelling into the camera that he's going to make John Cena tap out. There obviously was a lot of heat around this whole thing. Not legitimate heat. I'm talking about outside the ring heat. So much as John Cena Sr. didn't think that Gunther was the appropriate opponent for John Cena. And Cena himself even mentions that his dad probably talks too much and that his dad screws things up for him. But John Cena Sr. is not lying, right? Like, he's not lying. Gunther is not the person I would have picked to be John Cena's final opponent. He's not even in the top 10 people I would have picked. Obviously, everybody would have liked a legacy opponent. I think John Cena Sr. said Angle, which can't happen because Kurt Angle can't go. JBL, which was not likely. Very not likely. I think he said 2 other people, but I can't remember them off the top of my head, and I don't care enough to look them up. But it was all older talent, And I think that Cena's own words, which they played again during this episode of SmackDown, that he wanted to do for somebody the same thing Kurt Angle did for him. And I think that necessitates it being a younger talent. And Gunther is 37. All right. Now, I don't want to sit here and call a guy old, but Gunther's been wrestling for 20 years. He's been wrestling a long time. And I don't know how much longer he's going to be in WWE, because Gunther is a guy who takes this stuff pretty seriously, but he's also a very realistic guy. He's not a WWE guy either. He's the kind of guy where once this no longer serves him, he's going to be gone, and there's a certain positive nature to that. It means he's not a mark. But the negative to that is, do you really want the guy that retired Bill Goldberg, the guy that's going to be in John Cena's last match, win or lose, to be the kind of guy who could be gone in 3 years if things don't go his way? I mean, when you have potential lifers on the roster that aren't going to be going anywhere, and, haven't spent a whole lot of time on the indies, and I mean, you have so many more opportunities. And then when you think about, obviously, what John Cena said, you have multiple franchise players floating around in WWE. Javon Evans and Brian Breakker and Trick Williams and Carmelo Hayes. And, there's a lot of guys floating around that could be franchise players for WWE, and they all have their own strengths and weaknesses. But they're all more than 10 years younger than John Cena. And to have that option, and then you go with the guy, well, Gunther's 10 years younger than John Cena. But, when you look at it from that perspective, that you could have had these guys and built around them, and you chose to use Gunther, it's weird, for sure. There's a lot of conspiracy theories about Triple H and how he views guys like John Cena. He views that whole generation of Vince guys and how he treated them once Vince is gone. There's a lot of conspiracy theories about his treatment of Randy Orton currently. Orton hasn't been on TV in 2 months, almost 3. But I think Orton is 45 years old and probably not too upset that he doesn't have to take bumps every week. But if you compare the way he's treating AJ Styles and the way he treated Edge and the way he's treating John Cena, there's a lot of suspicion there that Triple H has always been a political animal. And he's setting himself up to be the guy. And he's quietly but assuredly trying to move on from quote-unquote Vince guys. And Cena, of course, is the ultimate in that space. That being said, I think Triple H realizes that the money was going to be there regardless of the creative. Once you announced the last run, t-shirts started flying off the shelves. People started buying tickets to shows with Cena on it. You didn't have to do too much. The show started to sell themselves. And I get that. And I think that's mostly what it is that the company got lazy. I'm not sure if it's sabotage as much as it's incompetence. And Gunther is not a bad wrestler. He's not a bad person. But he is not the right guy to be wrestling in John Cena's final match. Neither was LA Knight, by the way. I don't want people to think that I'm just dumping on Gunther, even though I call him Thwomp and all that kind of stuff. It was not just Gunther. It's this whole concept that when we saw the final run of, Ric Flair, he wrestled a bunch of guys he hadn't really wrestled before. And then he wrestled a guy that he inspired in his final match. I'm talking WWE match because Ric Flair did not wrestle another match in WWE. Like, he wrestled like MVP and Carlito, and I forget he wrestled a bunch of other people when his final run was happening. And the whole thing was, if Ric Flair loses one more match, it's going to be over. And Shawn Michaels had always looked up to Ric Flair. And that was the big culmination of that run. And that was special. That was really special. It wasn't necessarily Ric Flair handing the torch over to Shawn Michaels. Shawn Michaels didn't need that. But the story was set in a way where Shawn looked up to Ric Flair. And this was his hero that he was putting down. Gunther doesn't have nobody in WWE currently that's above the age of 30 has that sort of story when it comes to John Cena, right? So you can't do the Ric Flair story. You can't do anything other than what John Cena wanted to do. And it necessitates you doing a younger talent in this spot. And because John Cena apparently doesn't really play politics, I know that goof David Otunga is running around talking a lot about it now. He didn't really push for one specific talent or anything of the sort to take to the next level. And we know that he did do the job for Solo, and he did do the job for Austin Theory, and he did try to help Cody. And there was all of that happened. But this is the final match, not the final run. This is the final match. And the final match should mean a whole lot more than it does. But instead, he's treated like a trophy at the end of a tournament, which is bizarre and not fitting a star of John Cena's stature. And it doesn't really fit the stature of anybody. I've never heard of a guy saying he's going to retire and you're going to have to win a tournament in order to fight him. And the idea being, and this is what frustrates me the most, it doesn't benefit Gunther because we already know John Cena is going to retire whether Gunther loses or wins. It's not like Gunther beat the shit out of John Cena and then John Cena left his shoes in the ring. You know what I'm saying? That would have been the more striking visual. That would have been the more striking story, is if you'd have built up a regular story between the two. Gunther wins, and then Cena realizes, I can't keep up with these new young guys. That's it. And he leaves his shoes in the ring, or his cap in the ring, or something like that, and calls it a day. That would have taken Gunther from nya to nya, from here to here, right? But they didn't even do that. They decided Cena's going to retire on this date, period. Win, lose, or injury, and now we're stuck with it. So now there's almost the only emotion going into it is you're going to say goodbye to John Cena. And Cena allegedly rejected the idea of building the show around his final match. He wanted the younger talent to be highlighted. So it was his idea to do the NXT stuff. And I'm going to accept that because he was probably told who his final opponent was going to be. And basically just said, just bring some NXT guys with you, And it's no disrespect to Gunther, but everybody knows this guy is not from John Cena's generation. So it's not like the end of an era. He didn't look up to John Cena, so it's not like he's passing the torch. There's no real story here other than Triple H wants Gunther to be seen on that level. Therefore, Gunther is going to be seen on that level because that's what Triple H wants. Again, I mentioned this when I talked about AEW. And for some people who didn't listen to the AEW review, when you're a storyteller and you want to tell a certain story, you want to utilize certain characters in a certain way, sometimes, especially if you have an ongoing story where you're getting feedback from the audience pretty regularly, you want to give the audience what they want. It's one thing if you already wrote it and you put it out there and people are like, hey, midway through the book, I lost interest because you did this with this. It's different. You get feedback every week from the audience. You get feedback online. You get feedback in the building. Don't mistake the fact that the buildings sell out because John Cena's on the card, that people want to see John Cena wrestle just anybody. There's just so many mistakes in this situation. The fact that it's Saturday night's main event and not WrestleMania is a slap in the face. The fact that he didn't really get to handpick his final opponent, nor did his wishes to be able to put over somebody younger who was going to take the ball and run with it, that was not honored. Vince is not going to be there because they don't even say Vince's name anymore. I think John Cena is the only one that even mentions his name. I'm not sure Nick Khan did an interview and kind of avoid saying Vince's name. So you're in a really weird situation. And the sooner this is over, the better, in my opinion. And we're going to look back on it and say, man, what a lot of missed opportunities it was. Because if you were going to do it this way, you really should have did the original idea, which is Cena putting over Cody in the end. Either Cena beats Brock to end his career, or Cena puts over Cody to end his career. Those would have been the better options. And I know Cody is the same age as Gunther, but Cody is different. Cody's a WWE lifer. He's not going anywhere. Gunther, I'm not sure that he's a lifer. And that's how WWE for a long time has operated. Is, either they missed the park completely because they didn't know that was going to be the guy's last match, like they did with Crush and Macho Man Randy Savage, or Kurt Angle and Baron Corbin, where you had no earthly idea that this was going to be his guy's final opponent. You put him in a storyline with a guy, and then you find out later that the guy's going to leave and go to another company, or the guy can't go anymore. He can't last another year or something like that. And so his final opponent ends up being a weird choice, or ends up being the storybook ending like Ric Flair got. But not many guys get the Ric Flair setup. And it's really sad. Because that's, in our minds as fans, that's what we are seeing as the final retirement run. We're thinking about guys like Ric Flair and Tanahashi, who's going to get the match that he kind of wanted Nakamura, but he's going to get Okada, so that's just as good in his view. But for us, we got front loaded all of the potential matches. We could have gotten Orton, they gave it away. We could have gotten Punk, they gave it away. We could have got Cody, they gave it away. Because they needed matches for B pay-per-views. And now we're stuck with this shit. And it wouldn't have mattered to me whether it was Gunther, LA Knight, Jey Uso, or Rusev. None of these people should have been the final opponent for John Cena. It would have made more sense for it to be Rusev considering their history, but at this point of his career, Rusev is not on that level. So and then obviously you had guys like Drew McIntyre, who was also from the Ruthless Aggression era, and could have taken that huge push because he was the one guy from that generation that ended up being a star, who was much younger than Cena and Orton and all of those guys who were stars too. And he really started getting that push in 2020 and becoming world champion and a main event guy and stuff. And he had a great feud with CM Punk, so that he can do things, and he's from the same generation as Cody. And they whiffed it. Didn't do him at all. So you're like, man, it's a really bizarre thing that they're doing here. And it feels like sabotage. But I think at the same time, it's incompetence. That's 100% what it is. Let's get into the rest of this show because I spoke of Drew McIntyre. He got attacked by Cody Rhodes. Drew McIntyre is still suspended. He refuses to. Nick Aldis refused to reinstate him. And so he got attacked by Cody Rhodes. Cody Rhodes dug his fingers in his eyes and all this kind of stuff. They basically reenacted the attack from NXT. They stole the idea. Instead of it being an iguana attacking Ethan Page, it was Cody attacking Drew McIntyre. Then Cody got on the microphone, yelled that Drew McIntyre is a cockroach that he wants to stomp. That's not exactly... that doesn't exactly put a guy over for you to call a guy a cockroach in a promo. Anyway, Cody Rhodes wants to fight Drew McIntyre. Nick Aldis is dragging his feet on it. There's no good reason for Drew McIntyre to not get the match with Cody. Except for the fact that Nick Aldis is a goddamn hater and apparently an idiot. But instead, they decided to tell us something that was maybe interesting for us to know. That is that Obafemi and Ricky Starks, the winner of the match that will happen on NXT Deadline, will be facing Cody Rhodes at Saturday night's main event. Clearly, this means that Ricky Starks is going to win, right? Which we already knew that because that match is going to open the show. So, the NXT champion is going to wrestle the WWE champion on Saturday night's main event. Now, I like the idea. Ricky Starks is not exactly a young man. He's like 35 or something like that. So, it is what it is. If it was Obafemi, I would be more upset because I don't... They did this with Carmelo Hayes. That would be my problem. Is that they brought up Carmelo Hayes, and then they immediately threw him in the ring with Cody, and Cody beat him flat. And Carmelo Hayes has been just like I don't know if you guys have seen American Beauty, where that guy became absolutely obsessed with a plastic bag floating through the air. That's been Carmelo Hayes' career. We all have just been sitting here watching this plastic bag float in the air and just float around, and everybody's like, wow, we really like that plastic bag. And what does it mean for this plastic bag to just be floating about, just fluttering? It doesn't mean anything, right? You're reading meaning into it. It means that the bookers are incompetent. That's what it means. And I don't want the same thing for Obafemi. So if Oba is going to put over Ricky Starks, even though that's probably not the right terminology due to the fact that Ricky is a little bit older and, you know, probably not as over, but because of NXT. But this is the situation. And Cody wants to wrestle his friend, and Ricky Starks is going to be on the main roster probably next year. All right, fine. Because if he loses, it doesn't matter. He can just go back to NXT, and he's already almost 40, so it's not a big deal. And Ricky Starks could put over somebody younger a little bit later. But I would have been very, very, very angry if it was Cody Rhodes beating Obafemi. I would have been extremely upset. I'm a fan of Ricky Starks, don't get me wrong. But I'm not that much of a fan of Ricky Starks where I don't think he can lose to Cody Rhodes. I am, at that point, with Obafemi. I don't want to see Obafemi lose to anybody on the main roster. I want him to come in and steamroll people. But we're not going to get that because the bookers are incompetent. But this is fine. You know, the idea that they're going to mix NXT in on Saturday night's main event. Later on in the show, they announced that Bayley is going to be wrestling Sol Ruca. I actually like that. I like that idea. Bayley is an opponent that Sol Ruca can beat. She's completely beatable. But it also wouldn't be too offensive if Sol Ruca lost. But I also think it's the perfect setup for Sol Ruca to win the title, and then for her to be the NXT champion going into Saturday night's main event. I think that's going to be the setup, because they've already told you that the NXT men's champion, oh no, I'm Hangman Page, the NXT champion is going to wrestle Cody Rhodes, the WWE champion. So it's sensible that the women's champion is also going to wrestle on the show too. But they got nothing planned for JC Jane. All right, so I'm fine with all of this. I'm not fine with Cody Rhodes and Drew McIntyre. This feud's been going on forever, and it's seemingly going nowhere fast. I need this to end. Ilya Dragunov defeated Carmelo Hayes for the United States Championship, continuing the open challenge, even though it technically wasn't an open challenge. Technically, Carmelo Hayes was going to get this match regardless. For some reason, Ciampa interfered. Obviously, Ciampa wants to fight Ilya Dragunov for the title, and he cost Carmelo Hayes the match. Ilya Dragunov was furious that the honor of his victory was tainted, corrupted by the bald-head jackass himself, Tommaso Ciampa. Ciampa, of course, is walking around with a full gray beard. Full gray beard. We're talking about retirements and all this kind of stuff. This guy looks like he's been on AARP for the last 5 years. What a disaster this is. I don't understand why you have an open challenge and Tommaso Ciampa is being openly avoided. And then Ilya Dragunov tells Nick Aldis to make the match. Make the match! Nick, why can't you just do the open challenge? We have looked at this thing and said, obviously, Ilya Dragunov can pick his own opponents because he can deny an open challenge if he wanted to. Why not take Ciampa up on that match? You could have done that weeks ago. I don't understand this. It doesn't make sense in the context of open challenges, but whatever. So, we got a promo from Damian Priest. We also got a promo from Aleister Black. Damian Priest is bringing Rhea Ripley to do a mixed tag team match against Zelina Vega and Aleister Black. The Terror Twins, that's their thing. Instead of bringing Damian Priest's real girlfriend, who is a wrestler in WWE, they decided to bring Rhea Ripley. I ain't tripping, mainly because I don't think Lola Vice fits Damian Priest's gimmick. I'm also not sure what Damian Priest's gimmick actually is anymore. I don't understand why he would be black, Puerto Rican, goth metal kind of guy anymore. I don't understand that anymore. But this is what they're doing. So, Rhea Ripley and Damian Priest versus Aleister Black and Zelina Vega, fine. Fine. Can we find some way to end this feud, please? It would be something. For both of these guys need to separate because whoever is booking these shows, I consistently forget things that happen on a show that I watch every single week. This guy got burned in the face like a month and a half ago. And it's not a major angle. And neither one of these guys have been moved up the card after somebody was set on fire. All right? So we're stuck with this. Alexa Bliss defeated Kairi Sane. I like the finish to this match as Kairi Sane was going for the insane elbow. But Alexa Bliss got up and hit her with the Sister Abigail DDT thing. So that was fine. Then they were attacked by Lash Legend and Nia Jax, talking about Charlotte and Alexa. And then there was more run-ins with Nia and Lash Legend beating up the Kabuki Warriors. So there was everybody beating up everybody. Lash Legend is going to get her first match next week on SmackDown. I forgot who her opponent is going to be, but I had wrote it in the margins. Like, she's been on this roster for 3-4 weeks now. She has not cut a promo by herself. She has not had a match by herself. And she hasn't done anything. She's somehow, and I know it's incredibly easy to be, in the shadow of Nia Jax, who is still wearing too much makeup. They both are. And it seems to me like Lash Legend was brought to the main roster for nothing. For nothing. To team up with Nia Jax because they don't have anybody else. Unfortunate, I must say. Jade Cargill defeated Alba Fire. I was screaming like, why is she wrestling other heels? Where are the baby faces? And then Mia Yim got in Jade Cargill's face as she was intimidating B-Fab again for the second week in a row. Clearly, they're building a B-Fab heel turn, and she's going to join Jade Cargill. Jade Cargill's been doing her baddies thing. Instead of doing it on television where it makes sense, where she might be bringing people in to show off and try different. Like, this is definitely something you do on television. She's trying to recreate the baddie section that she had in AEW, which is absolutely something she should be doing on TV. Instead, she's wrestling in nothing matches. Instead, she is barely even visible on the show. She's been champion for like a month now. Again, a lot of this stuff has been in cruise control for over 3 weeks. Nothing has happened. Like, if you skipped SmackDowns, you didn't miss a damn thing. So, they want to have Mia Yim versus Jade Cargill, which to me is pointless. I don't care about that. B-Fab joining Jade Cargill might be fun. Again, I think it might have been better if it was Kiana James. But we'll see how it works. Because B-Fab and Mia Yim obviously is not working out. Mia Yim, just nothing works out. I just keep forgetting she works there. When was the last time she won a match on TV? Instead of Jade Cargill in a pointless match against Alba Fire, how about you have Mia Yim wrestle somebody and win matches and get over and be considered a threat to Jade Cargill? How about that? And we haven't heard word the first about Tiffany Stratton. Clearly she must have gotten hurt. And instead of Jade Cargill coming out talking about how she hurt Tiffany Stratton and she put her on the shelf and all that kind of stuff in order to get heat, we're just ignoring it. It's like Tiffany Stratton didn't fucking exist. She was champion all year. Now she doesn't exist. Nobody talks about Bianca Belair anymore. It's just like she doesn't exist. All of these people, it's like they fell off the face of the earth. Nobody knows who they are. Nobody knows where they are. And it's just these like 4 people. It's ridiculous. Julia, she showed up. She chased off Chelsea Green. I'm not sure if Julia's supposed to be a babyface or a heel. The crowd is unsure as well. And they forgot she even existed. This thing with Julia proves that it's not sabotage, but incompetence. Because Julia came in with all the hype in the world. And then they made the fatal mistake of bringing somebody else in with all the hype in the world right behind her. And instead of keeping them separate, they decided we're going to call up both of them at the same time pretty much. What the hell did they do that for? So now they took the title off of Julia to give it to Stephanie Vaquer. And then they continued to have Julia in NXT while Stephanie Vaquer was a champion. And then they called up Julia. And then weeks later, they called up Stephanie Vaquer. And then Stephanie Vaquer is the world champion and Julia's the U.S. champion. And then Julia loses her belt. And now she doesn't get any reaction because she doesn't do anything on this show. Poor baby. I want you to realize, though, this is not Julia's fault. If they'd have left her alone in NXT to just let her rock for like a year or so, she could have learned English, gotten a whole lot better, and it wouldn't have mattered that Stephanie Vaquer is suffering from the same issue because she's the world champion and she's not doing anything either, okay? So it's not Julia's lame and Julia's garbage and, they were overhyped and all that. Look at the creative. What are they doing? Are they doing some of the best stuff in the world and they're not getting over? No. They're barely on the show at all. Chelsea Green's there, though. We love Chelsea Green. It's unfortunate for her that she's in this situation because Chelsea Green can talk. She ain't much of a wrestler, but she has a lot of personality and she doesn't take herself too seriously. So she's willing to go out there and take bumps and do things. But for some reason, they decided she's going to be in some kind of feud with Jade Cargill, which is retarded. So nobody wants to see Julia. Unfortunate. Let's talk about Solo Sikoa because he got a stand-up promo. A stand-up promo mid-ring for Solo Sikoa. So Solo Sikoa brags about taking out Sami Zayn, solved the Sami Zayn problem, then said that everything that belongs to Bray now belongs to Bo and will be his because he's going to take it from Bo. And then says all he's got to do is believe. Oh, brother. It was an ice cold line, I got to tell you that. I did like that they used Bray Wyatt in the story. I don't like this feud, however, because the MFTs and the Wyatts are these are some of the worst Nepo babies in wrestling, bro. Like, I'm not even going to lie to you. The Usos' little brother and Bray Wyatt's little brother is going to be with incredibly chunky Jeff Cobb, Hikuleo, who is a man on stilts, Eric Redbeard, who apparently is not. I forgot he even worked there, bro. I swear, like I say that stuff sometimes. It's legitimate every time. I forgot he worked there. I was like, who the fuck is this tall, bald man? He looks like Eric Rowan. And I was like, oh shit, it is Eric Rowan. They hired him back. He's been on the roster for over a year. What has he done? He's done this. Pop up every 3 weeks or something like that. Whoa. Whoa. And the tag team championship is tied up in this. Whoa. SmackDown sucks, dog. It's really bad, man. It's a sad show. I see why people stop watching it. You know? It's not even fun. But oh jeez. Like, share, subscribe, man. Y'all talk to you guys later. See you later.
Yeah. We're just gonna